I have reverted my firmware in my XH2S to version 1.3, and in today's video I'm going to compare the firmware version 7 to the version 1.3. And we're going to answer the question, is the Fujifilm autofocus getting worse and worse? I do not recommend you to do what I did, meaning reverting to version 1.3. This is for me to test, and I take responsibilities of my camera, but I cannot take responsibility for yours. So do this at your own risk. So what are we gonna test today? I made 4 tests to check the autofocus capabilities of both firmware 1.3 and firmware 7.0. The first test is simply to walk towards and away from the camera. Simple test, right? Second test is to hide partially or completely my head with my hand and to see how the camera behaves, as well as if there is any hunting or any problem of autofocus. The third test is to basically walk from left to right on the frame with some obstacles to see how the autofocus performs and how it tracks me. And finally, the fourth test, a little bit challenging, is to run straight to the camera and see whether or not the autofocus is able to follow me or not. I performed those 4 tests on both version 1.3 and version 7 of the firmwares on my Fujifilm XH2S using the XF 18mm f1.4. Now for all those tests I've used the same setting, AFC meaning continuous, multi, as well as eye detection on the Fujifilm camera. And for all those tests I'm recording my LCD screen using my iPhone so you can see how the system tracks my eyes. So first test, walking towards and away from the camera. This is a simple test, but is a very useful one because this often happens. This is something that I often ask my clients to do when it comes to engagement or elopement or even wedding shots, right? This is very basic and any autofocus system should be able to do that. Now let's look at firmware 7.0. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of hunting going on. And the worst part is that the system tends to lock on trees in the background, meaning that it thinks that I'm a tree or a leaf, I don't know. I've also tried to vary the way I turn away from the camera. Sometimes I would not turn at all, I would just go back and go in front, right? Sometimes I would turn away, but as soon as I would turn away with version 7.0, the camera would just try to lock on something else. If I go too far from the camera, it will lock on the trees or on the leaves. Basically, non-usable for me. I cannot trust the system if it hunts that much. And when it hunts, it doesn't only hunt to find me directly, right? It does it several times before it's able to lock on my eye. And that's true if I don't move, but if I keep moving, it will keep hunting again and again, especially if I get closer to the camera. And this is kind of related to the point that I mentioned in my previous video, where those talking heads, so right now I'm actually filming myself with version 1.3, right? Those talking heads would hunt again and again and again and again, every time I would just do this, right? And you also have noticed it as well, and this has been one of the feedback that I've been getting more and more on my videos, that it's just hunting a lot and kind of distracting. So now let's look at version 1.3. I am walking, I'm turning my head, as you can see, like there are several cases, right? I either walk towards and walk back without turning my head or while turning my head. And as you can see, the camera is able to track me easily, is able to completely stay in focus. It's not hunting. There is no weird focus bump that's going on, right? And it feels continuous. It doesn't feel like step by step like it should be for a linear motor lens, and like it did not feel on the version 7.0, which makes me question what's going on there. It's like, are the instructions of focus properly made from the camera to the lens in a continuous manner, meaning with a high enough frequency? We're not sure about that. It seems like it's like a step. You can almost distinguish the instructions with version 7.0, and you can't do that with version 1.3. So yeah, version 1.3 wins easily on this one. And honestly, it's really a shame because the version 1.3 is like 2 years old, right? So what's going on there? I'm not sure. Next, simple test as well, hiding part of my face as well as my face completely and see how the focus behaves, right? And this is useful for me because sometimes they are bouquets or they are objects or just hand, right? People hugging each other, etc. This is something that I need to know that works, and if it doesn't, it's a huge problem. On version 7.0, what I observe is that as soon as I put a hand here, right? So right now it's 1.3, but as soon as I put a hand in front of my face, the camera is going to focus on the hand, not on my face, right? My eyes is completely ignored. But on the back of the LCD screen, you can see the box on the eye, right? Meaning that it's kind of a false positive, which is even worse for me. It's like I can't even trust the information that I see on the back of the camera, right? Then if I completely hide my face and then again I remove my hands, it's hunting like crazy, and it focuses back, you know, in the leaves and the tree, and then it goes back on my nose, and then it goes back on the leaves, and then it goes back on my... It's like, it is absolutely not usable. Like, I cannot deliver a video to a client with this kind of performance in autofocus. That's absolutely not acceptable. So yeah, that's not working to me. Version 1.3, what I can see is that if I basically hide half of my face, no problem, it still sticks to my eye. If I put my hand like a little bit closer to my eye, depending on the position, maybe it will lock on my hand, but usually it still stays on my eye, right? And if I completely hide my face, it will focus on my hand. Then as soon as I remove my hand, right, my eyes are locked in and it focuses directly on my eyes. It doesn't hunt, it doesn't go in the background and then move forward, etc., right? It's working as it should be. So again, firmware from 2 years ago is performing way better than the latest firmware that they release. That's kind of concerning. Now let's move on to our third test. In the third test, what I'm trying to do, okay, if there is an obstacle, if I move behind an object, how will the camera behave? And this can happen if you're behind a pole or behind I don't know, anything, right? An object. This can happen in my shooting sessions. That's why I'm trying to test that again, right? And again, version 7.0, what I see is that when I get behind the pole and I appear on the other side, sometimes it tracks me, sometimes it just loses me completely. I have time to go from one side of a pole to the other side, take a few steps, and finally it catches me. But of course, before catching me, there's a little bit of hunting, right? Because that's what you get now, improvement. And yeah, that's what I observe. It doesn't track me properly and it hunts. Version 1.3, it tracks me properly. There is one moment in the test where I felt like, okay, it lost me a little bit and it locked on something else. But that was one time, not the whole time, as I could see with version 7.0, right? So yeah, again, no improvement there. Like, where is the improvement after 2 years of firmware? I don't know. Maybe someone in Fuji can answer the question in the comments, I don't know. But there is absolutely no improvement. It had just gotten worse. So yeah. And final test, this time I will run towards the camera. A few sprints in summer, right? It's very fun to do. And again, no surprise, version 7.0 is completely lost. It's just, I would be surprised, honestly, if there is one frame in focus while I'm running. And version 1.3 sticks to my eye, focuses, there's no hunting. Again, that's like a huge problem. It's like it's hunting all the time as soon as you get a little closer to the camera. It doesn't work at all, 7.0, right? Like, it's the same crap as 6.0. It's like the same. It's like autofocus improvement. Please explain what you did, because like there is no improvement there. It's like the version from 2 years ago is way better than your latest version. So yeah, here are 4 tests for you to decide on what you think about the firmware improvement and the firmware update of Fujifilm currently. But personally, from what I observe, 7.0 is completely unusable for my work. And it really makes me ask the question, like, what are they doing? Like, what is the process to push a firmware out, right? Like, what is the process for them to say, okay, we truly believe that this version of the algorithm for autofocus is better than the previous one? Because I've made like simple tests in the park, like that's right there, right? It's like, I've also made this kind of talking head, right? I actually use the camera for like shooting, right? I'm really curious to see how they test it and how they validate it, if they do. Because how can you have such bad results when you compare one of the first firmware, right? Which is supposed to be like the basics, right? And then you take a firmware like more than six firmware later, like I don't know how many firmware they were, but like almost 2 years or something later, and it's so bad, it doesn't work at all. Like I can't use that on a video project. It's like I can't use autofocus currently in the current state in the Fujifilm X-H2S. So now let's talk about, okay, what are my choices right now? I either have the choice between keeping my version 7.0 firmware with a completely unusable autofocus, right? Except that I spent $2,500 on my Fujifilm X-H2S. I spent about, I don't know, $3,000 on the XF18mm f1.4, the 33mm f1.4, and the 56, right? So those are supposed to be a linear model lens. Okay, maybe not the 56, but still it's supposed to focus better than the previous one, right? And right now, I feel like my 18 and 33 focus as well as the first version of the 56 millimeter f1.2, meaning that it focused by steps and it's completely unusable for video. So basically, I can't use those lenses for video, right? Or I just switch to manual lenses and do everything manually, which is possible, but it kind of defeats the $2,500 price point, right? You advertise a camera with autofocus that I can't use for autofocus right now. Or I, revert back to the version 1.3 with a firmware that you do not support and that you do not guarantee, but that firmware, you actually released it, right? So you release the firmware and you don't allow me to revert back to it, but that's the firmware that has a working autofocus. So it puts me in the situation where I'm like, okay, what should I do? I'm not sure. Should I go to 7.0 and just not use autofocus, which is interesting, right? Very interesting for a camera that's autofocus, or just go with the firmware that doesn't have, the red square, or you cannot use the app, or a lot of things, right? So yeah, this is kind of the dilemma where we are right now as Fujifilm users, right? And it kind of sucks to be in that place, honestly. Because when you think about it nowadays, for $2,500 plus the $3,000 that I spent on Fujifilm lenses, right, I can get a Blackmagic cinema camera 6K full frame, right, that doesn't really have autofocus, but so, same for the Fujifilm X-H2S at the moment with version 7.0, doesn't work really well, but it has RAW internally, right? And it has really good image quality overall, great package, right? Or I can get a Nikon Z6 Mark III that has autofocus, that has RAW internally, and that has all the features that they advertise on the X-H2S, but currently don't work. It doesn't work, right? So yeah, it really make me ask the question, like, okay, why can't they fix that? And how long is it gonna take? Because they've been saying in their firmware update that they've been improving autofocus. From where to where? What has been improved? How did you test it? Maybe it would be good to release some more information, right? Because you don't release any information right now, Fujifilm, and we don't know what's going on, and we just see that it's not working after very, very, very basic tests, right? Standing here and seeing whether or not it hunts or not, or if it's sticking my eye or not. Right now I can see it does, but yeah, that's like one of your first firmwares. So yeah, you can understand that I'm a bit frustrated at the moment because yeah, I don't make money. Not most of my money is with YouTube, right? Most of my money is actually using the cameras to create videos or pictures for clients, right? And right now, 7.0 not usable at all. So let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed to my newsletter yet, I invite you to do so. That way you will directly be informed and notified of this kind of video, as well as articles that I publish on my website. And yeah, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well. I'll see you in the next one.